of Waverly had its share of ghost stories, but none were more whispered about than the tale of bus number 175. It was an ordinary bus by day, ferrying workers to their jobs and students to school. But the stories began when the sun dipped below the horizon. On moonless nights, when the fog rolled in thick from the sea, bus 175 was said to travel a different route, one that was not on any map. The first to report something strange was an old driver, Mr. Patterson, who had been with the transit company for nearly 30 years. He claimed that on his late-night shift, the bus would sometimes take a turn on its own, guiding him down an unfamiliar road lined with tall, shadowy trees. The headlights would barely pierce the darkness, and no matter how hard he tried to steer back to the main road, the bus would continue on its eerie path. Patterson told his supervisor, but no one believed him. That was until other drivers began to report the same thing. The route would change, and the passengers would change, too. People would board at the usual stops, but as the bus ventured deeper into the night, the faces grew unfamiliar. They were silent passengers, with eyes that never met the drivers, and skin as pale as the mist outside. Some said these passengers were the spirits of those who had died in accidents on the very road the bus now traveled, their souls unable to find rest. Others believed that bus 175 was cursed, doomed to carry the dead on their final journey. The most chilling story came from a young woman, a college student, who claimed she had been the only living passenger on one of these haunted rides. She boarded the bus late, after spending the evening at the library. At first, it seemed like any other night, but as they drove further into the mist, she noticed something strange. The other passengers, who had been quiet from the start, were now staring straight ahead, their faces devoid of emotion. She tried to speak to the driver, but he didn't respond. Panic set in when she realized they were no longer in Waverly. The bus was moving through a dense forest she had never seen before, the road winding in ways that defied logic. When she finally dared to look back at the passengers, she saw their faces had changed. They were gaunt, with hollow eyes and twisted expressions of agony. The young woman pulled the cord to signal a stop, but the bus didn't slow. Desperate, she ran to the door and pounded on it, her pleas growing more frantic as the bus continued to speed through the darkness. Just when she thought she would be trapped on that bus forever, the fog lifted, and the bus emerged onto a familiar street in Waverly. The driver stopped, the doors opened, and she stumbled out, trembling. When she turned back to look, bus 175 was gone, vanished as if it had never been there. The next morning, she went to the transit office to report what had happened, but they had no record of bus 175 running that night. The young woman left Waverly shortly after, unable to shake the feeling that the bus was still out there, waiting. And so, the legend of bus number 175 grew. To this day, on misty, moonless nights, people claim to see its headlights in the distance, cutting through the fog. But those who know the story well stay away, for fear that they might become the next passengers on its ghostly route, never to return.